It's incredible, Danny, to see the way that things are unfolding for Seattle in the wild card side of things. We touched on this earlier in the week, making some comparisons to 1995, where it was one team. It was the Angels who collapsed, and the Mariners went on that hot streak at the end of the year. But right now, and it's early, and there's still plenty of time left, you're seeing a couple of teams all of a sudden just hit a wall. First off, Boston, who has, after having a 10.5 game lead on the New York Yankees, seen it completely evaporate. Now they're a game behind New York. You've seen the Oakland A's lose their last 4 games, and Oakland's schedule ahead of them after a series that they just had against the Chicago White Sox. Check that. They have one last game, but they've lost 3 games to the White Sox. They have a lot of tough games left the rest of the way, and also the Toronto Blue Jays have lost a couple. So now the Mariners are, at least percentage point-wise, the last team out, because Oakland and Boston are tied for that second spot.
When you have multiple teams like this, it becomes tougher to gauge like actual odds. You've got 5 teams for 2 spots. And then you can throw in sort of the longer shot of Seattle winning the division. The reason that's a longer shot is not just because Houston is more out in front, but because Houston and Oakland are going to play each other, and one of those teams is going to win those games, right? Like it makes it, those sort of situations make it harder to catch because you're guaranteed to have one of those teams. You're not able to pick up ground on them even if you win that game.
Correct.
But you try and calculate, okay, how well is the team playing? Right now, Oakland has cooled off after having an extraordinary hot streak after picking up Starling Marte. Like they've cooled off, and they lost to the Chicago White Sox yesterday. They got beat up in Chicago. Boston has been in a free fall. I expect Boston's better than they've played recently, and they'll get Chris Sale back. Like I think that Boston is not as bad as they've looked recently. I think Boston's going to end up being closer to winning the division than they are to losing the wild card, but we'll see. But other teams like the Yankees have been on fire. They're going to come back to earth here. Like the Yankees are not going to keep winning at this clip.
Well, the good news for the Mariners is that the Yankees play the A's at the end of the month. It's a 4-game series, and up next for the A's after this series against the White Sox, no big deal, the also really awesome this year San Francisco Giants. In fact, over the next, let's say 10 days before the end of the month, the Oakland A's 2 easiest games are against the Seattle Mariners. This is a really interesting stretch for them. You're probably right in that New York will cool down, but there's a part of me, too, that I've been waiting for this all year from New York. And with Boston, I'm sort of like, I can't believe that Boston even got off to the start that they did. I feel like this is maybe more an accurate reflection of Boston and New York and where they actually are and who they actually have as far as their talent.
When you have this many teams, I think you end up focusing on how your team is playing more than how another team is doing. And for me, I chalk this up. If the Mariners win 2 out of 3 games, and that's a huge ask. If they win 2 out of 3 games over this final quarter of the season, they're going to make the playoffs. One way or another, they're going to make the playoffs. You can't count on one other team belly flopping because you've got so many teams involved. There are going to be examples where those 2 teams play each other. I think it's going to be on the Mariners. They're going to have to play. They're going to have to win 2 out of 3. I think to be able to catch. They're going to need to catch and pass 2 different teams, right?
Yeah, they will.
3 different teams. They're going to need to catch and pass 3 different teams to get into the playoffs. You're going to have to win 2 out of 3.
Yep, you're right. That said, though, I can, like right now, I can legitimately see them overtaking Oakland. Because
yeah, I would agree.
Oakland's got another series against the White Sox ahead of them, and they have 2 series to wrap up the year against the Astros, plus a couple of series more against the Mariners, too. So that team, yeah. It's the other teams that are the question. It's Toronto, too, who is lurking. And while they're not playing great right now and George Springer just got hurt, I mean, we saw on Sunday what those bats can do. They're terrifying. It's not just Simeon and Vladimir Guerrero and Bichette. They also got Teoscar Hernandez, too.
Teoscar Hernandez is a fantastic player.
Yeah.
He is absolute, and he was great against the Mariners. I think they've got the best offense. I think of all these teams in this scramble, the Mariners, they have the worst offense. They also have the youngest offense. And that's right. If I outline a scenario in which they end up making the playoffs, it's not so much about, hey, this team falls on its face. It's about you've got a couple young players that start performing at a level that they just haven't been. And I look primarily at Jared Kelnick just because of the talent level. But you get a couple players that really start playing above. If it's Fraley, I thought Fraley hit the ball pretty sharply last night. Didn't get a lot of production out of it. You have a couple young players who get hot, who have a blazing month. I think that's the window that you're looking for. The opportunity. Like what would happen? What would have to happen for the Mariners to make the playoffs? They'd have to have at least one and probably two of their young players absolutely go on a tear.
Raleigh did have the double last night.
Mm-hmm.
He smacked that one. I agree with you, but I also feel like there are two guys right now that have cooled off, and they need to uncool themselves. Mitch Haniger has cooled off, and I would say
that's definitely true. His power especially.
Yeah.
I mean, his average is down too, but his power's really down this month.
I actually asked our baseball consigliere, Luke Arkins, like, what do you think's been going on with Mitch Haniger? And he said, I'm assuming it's not health-related, maybe a mechanical issue, but he's had cold month before, and he expects that he will bounce back by the end of the year. He does need to, because there was a time where he was carrying things, and right now you're basically doing rain dances for Kyle Seager.
Yes, Kyle Seager is.
Give him credit, though. He's played well.
Yeah, he hits with some tremendous power. You've gotten great power from him this season. His average has dipped significantly, where he's not the 260 with power guy right now. He's the 220 with power guy. Ty France hitting for an extraordinary average and doesn't strike out. You're going to need a couple guys to step up into that void. And if Haniger gets hot again, that'd be fantastic.